Behind the bright lights and fancy parties, Hollywood had a darker side, one filled with secrets and scandals nobody talked about. Some actors got mixed up in crimes or suspicious activities. Studios would sometimes cover things up by paying off witnesses or slipping money to reporters. Other times, famous actors just used their star power to dodge scrutiny. Let's count down the top 20 most controversial Golden Age actors who weren't exactly the heroes they played on screen. First, Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle. First up is Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle, one of the first big comedy stars of silent films. He was famous for his big size and hilarious slapstick routines that had audiences doubled over. He was so popular that he was pulling in $1 million a year, an absolute fortune back then. Poor Roscoe had it rough growing up. His mom raised him mostly on her own, but died when he was just 12. After she passed, his dad forced him to work for his keep and beat him when he couldn't find jobs. Then September 1921 happened, and everything fell apart. Arbuckle threw a party at a San Francisco hotel where a young actress named Virginia Rapp got seriously ill. She died 4 days later from a ruptured bladder. The main witness against him, Maud Delmont, claimed Arbuckle attacked Rapp and caused her injuries. Newspapers went wild with scandalous headlines, though Delmont wasn't exactly reliable. She had a criminal record and kept changing her story. Arbuckle went through 3 manslaughter trials. The first 2 juries couldn't agree. The first voted 11-1 for acquittal, the second 9-3 for conviction. In the third trial, he was found not guilty. And get this, the jury even wrote him an apology, saying he was entirely innocent and free from all blame. But the damage was done. His movies were banned. Hollywood blacklisted him, and he was stuck with $700,000 in legal bills that bankrupted him. Friends like Charlie Chaplin helped him find some directing work under a fake name, but his days as a leading comedian were over. He died in 1933, just as things were starting to look up for him again. You know what's sad? Despite all his troubles, Arbuckle remained incredibly generous. Even at the height of his fame, he'd perform for free at children's hospitals and orphanages, and quietly paid medical bills for crew members who got sick. Buster Keaton once said, "Fatty was the most generous man around Hollywood. He'd give you the shirt off his back even when he had only one." Second, Errol Flynn. Next, we've got Errol Flynn, that handsome devil who played swashbuckling heroes in movies like Captain Blood and The Adventures of Robin Hood. Audiences couldn't get enough of that dashing smile and confident charm, but off-screen, this guy was Hollywood's ultimate party animal, with a reputation for dating more women than he could count. Flynn's destructive tendencies probably came from his troubled childhood. Born in Tasmania, his mother physically and psychologically abused him so badly that he ran away from home when he was just 7 years old. In late 1942, Flynn got charged with statutory rape. 2 teenage girls, Betty Hansen and Peggy Satterlee, accused him of having sex with them when they were just 17. The newspapers had a field day with all the shocking details. But after a trial that captivated America, Flynn was found not guilty in February 1943. Despite getting off, rumors followed him everywhere for the rest of his life. He drank too much and lived wild, throwing lavish parties on his yacht. Some people thought his fame and studio connections helped him escape legal trouble, while others believed he was innocent of those specific charges. Fans still love his movies today, but Flynn remains a controversial figure whose private behavior cast a long shadow over his Hollywood legacy. Third, Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin is considered one of cinema's greatest geniuses. He created that iconic character with the baggy pants and little mustache who made the whole world laugh. But off camera, Chaplin's personal life was a mess of controversy and legal troubles. Chaplin's thing for really young women might have come from his own awful childhood. Born into extreme poverty, his alcoholic dad abandoned the family when Charlie was just a toddler. His mom, Hannah, suffered severe mental illness and ended up institutionalized when Charlie was only 14. He had this disturbing pattern with young women. He married Mildred Harris in 1918 when she was 16 and he was 29. Then, in 1924, he married Leda Gray when she was 16 and he was 35. Most people found these relationships deeply troubling, thinking Chaplin was taking advantage of girls who were way too young. He also got hit with a paternity suit from actress Joan Barry, who claimed he fathered her child. Blood tests showed he wasn't the father, but those tests weren't allowed in court back then, so he still had to pay child support. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover kept a massive file on Chaplin, suspecting him of communist sympathies. During the Cold War, this was career poison, and Chaplin's outspoken left-wing views made him a target. In 1952, while Chaplin was traveling abroad, the U.S. government yanked his re-entry permit. Instead of fighting to come back, he settled in Switzerland. His final marriage to Una O'Neill, when she was 18 and he was 54, actually lasted 34 years until his death and gave them 8 children. Unlike his earlier relationships, this one stuck. Una remained devoted to him and his legacy even after he died. While Chaplin's artistic genius forever changed film, his personal life and political views stirred up major controversy. The debate still rages about separating his amazing artistic contributions from his problematic personal behavior. Fourth, Wallace Beery. Wallace Beery was that tough-looking actor famous for movies like Big Jack and Grand Hotel. He usually played grumpy but lovable characters. Behind the scenes, though, rumors swirled about a shocking incident: the death of comedian Ted Healey, the guy who created the Three Stooges. Beery's path to Hollywood was strange and troubled. His early life was filled with violence and dysfunction that probably contributed to his notorious mean streak on movie sets. Ironically, the man known for playing lovable father figures in films like The Champ was reportedly abusive to his own adopted daughter, Carol Ann. In December 1937, Healey died after supposedly getting into a fight at the Trocadero nightclub. Some unconfirmed stories claimed that Beery and 2 other men got into a brawl with Healey, but officially, Healey died from acute toxic nephritis caused by alcoholism, and nobody ever got charged. Some people think MGM, Beery's studio, covered up the crime by paying off witnesses to protect Beery's career. This rumor was never proven, but it was enough to paint Beery as possibly part of a dark conspiracy. What's more certain is that Beery was a nightmare to work with, bullying co-stars and fighting with directors. Despite being such a jerk on set, he kept starring in popular films throughout his career. The rumors about Ted Healey's death show how Hollywood gossip could stick around for decades, even without solid evidence, especially before modern investigative techniques and media scrutiny. Fifth, George Raft. George Raft got famous playing gangsters in films like Scarface, 1932. He was known for his slicked back hair, fancy suits, and cool attitude. And yeah, in real life, he actually did have connections to mobsters that raised a few eyebrows in Hollywood. Raft's mob connections came from his rough upbringing in Hell's Kitchen, New York City. Throughout his career, he stayed friends with known gangsters, including Bugsy Siegel. These friendships weren't hidden. Raft openly admitted knowing these guys from his youth. Funny enough, despite his tough background, Raft was obsessed with cleanliness. He reportedly showered multiple times a day and changed his shirt up to 3 times daily, even when he was broke. While rumors flew that Raft helped settle mob disputes or acted as a go-between for gangsters and Hollywood, nobody ever found solid evidence that he personally participated in criminal activities. His gambling addiction did lead to money troubles, though, and sometimes his powerful friends had to bail him out. Raft's background and connections made him perfect for gangster roles, leaving people wondering where the acting stopped and real life began. His story shows how the line between Hollywood and the criminal underworld sometimes got blurry back then. Sixth, Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra's difficult birth in Hoboken, New Jersey, shaped his entire life. Born on December 12, 1915, nobody thought he'd make it when he was delivered with forceps that badly damaged his eardrum, punctured his neck, and scarred his cheek. His birth was so traumatic that the doctor focused on saving his mother's life first, putting the seemingly stillborn baby aside until his grandmother revived him under cold water. While we know Sinatra best as a legendary singer, he was also a fantastic actor in films like From Here to Eternity, 1953. His smooth voice and classic style made him an idol, but behind that charm, rumors about Mafia connections followed him everywhere. The FBI kept extensive files on Sinatra, documenting his friendships with known mobsters. While they never found evidence that Sinatra committed any crimes himself, his close relationships with guys like Sam Giancana and other mob figures were no secret. Sinatra's connections stretched into politics, especially his friendship with President John F. Kennedy. This relationship later cooled after Kennedy distanced himself from Sinatra because of those alleged mob ties. These connections raised all kinds of questions about potential conflicts of interest and inappropriate influence. Look, Sinatra grew up in an era and neighborhood where knowing people connected to organized crime wasn't unusual. Whether these relationships were corrupt or just a product of where he came from is still debated by historians. Either way, Sinatra's talent and cultural impact are undeniable, even as questions about his mob friendships linger. Seventh, Robert Mitchum. Robert Mitchum had this calm, cool style in noir classics like Out of the Past, 1947, and The Night of the Hunter, 1955. He played mysterious men with a rugged charm. Off-screen, he had a rebellious attitude and never apologized for how he lived his life. In September 1948, Mitchum got arrested in a marijuana raid at a house party in Los Angeles. This was a huge scandal back then, when smoking pot carried a much bigger stigma than today. The press went crazy with the story, and it looked like his career might be over. He was convicted of criminal conspiracy to possess marijuana and got sentenced to 60 days in jail, which he served in early 1949. Surprisingly, the scandal didn't wreck his career permanently. After doing his time, he went right back to making movies. His studio, RKO, stood by him, and audiences welcomed him back. In fact, his brush with the law kind of enhanced his bad boy image, which fit perfectly with the tough guys he often played. Mitchum's case stands out because he was one of the few major stars who actually faced legal consequences for drug use but still managed to keep a successful career afterward. His comeback showed that some stars could weather scandals that would have destroyed others. Eighth, Lionel Atwill. Lionel Atwill was known for his roles in horror films like Mystery of the Wax Museum, 1933, and Son of Frankenstein, 1939. His tall, commanding presence made him perfect for playing mad scientists or cunning villains. Yet in real life, Atwill found himself caught up in a scandal involving alleged sexual impropriety. His sophisticated British background made him stand out at Hollywood parties, where he built a reputation as an intellectual who hosted gatherings with discussions about literature and science, quite different from the wild parties he was later accused of throwing. In 1940-41, Atwill got investigated for parties at his home that supposedly involved porn. films and sexual activities. When questioned during grand jury proceedings, he was accused of perjury, lying under oath about what went on at these gatherings. In 1942, he pled guilty to the perjury charge and got 5 years probation. This conviction destroyed his reputation and career. Major studios wouldn't cast him in important roles anymore, and he got stuck with tiny parts in B movies for the rest of his career. The specific details of the parties never came out in court, but the scandal was enough to transform him from a respected character actor to a Hollywood outcast. Atwill's case shows how the moral standards of that era could end careers, especially when combined with legal problems like perjury. He kept working in smaller roles until his death in 1946, but never got back to his former status in the industry. The perjury scandal hit during an already tough time. He was fighting bronchial cancer that would eventually kill him. Despite his failing health and ruined reputation, he kept taking even the smallest roles to provide for his family. After his death, several colleagues suggested that Atwill may have lied not to protect himself, but to shield more powerful Hollywood figures who had attended his parties. His fourth wife, Mary Paula Shilton, whom he married in 1944, after the scandal, stood by him during his final years and gave birth to their son, Lionel Anthony Atwill, in 1945, just months before he died. Ninth, Spade Cooley. Known as the King of Western Swing, Spade Cooley was mainly a musician and bandleader who also appeared in Western films and hosted a TV show in Los Angeles. On stage, he seemed charming, playing the fiddle and leading lively dance tunes. On April 3, 1961, Cooley committed one of the most shocking crimes in entertainment history. He brutally beat his wife, Ella Mae Cooley, to death in their home, with their 14-year-old daughter, Melody, partly witnessing the attack. The details were horrific. He savagely beat her, causing numerous injuries. In the months before the murder, Cooley had convinced himself his wife was cheating on him with Roy Rogers, his former bandmate and more successful rival. Though there was zero evidence of such a relationship, this delusion consumed him. During his trial, psychiatric evaluations revealed severe mental health issues, including paranoid delusions and possible brain damage from chronic alcoholism. In a tragic postscript, his daughter Melody, who witnessed part of the attack, never recovered from the trauma and struggled with substance abuse and mental health issues throughout her life. Unlike many cases on our list where allegations remained unproven, Cooley was convicted of first-degree murder by a jury after a month-long trial in August 1961. The jury rejected his defense that his wife's death was accidental or that she died from heart failure. He got sentenced to life in prison. After serving 8 years, Cooley was granted a 72-hour furlough to perform at a police benefit concert. After the show, he had a fatal heart attack backstage and died on November 23, 1969. Cooley's case stands out as one of undisputed guilt for a heinous crime that ended both his career and freedom. 10th, Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford was a top actress from the 1930s to the 1950s, starring in films like Grand Hotel, 1932, and Mildred Pierce, 1945. She created this image of a hard-working star who rose from poverty to become a glamorous leading lady. But after her death, allegations of abusive behavior surfaced that shocked Hollywood. Crawford's most controversial legacy comes from her daughter, Christina Crawford's 1978 memoir, Mommy Dearest. In it, Christina accused Joan of physical and emotional abuse, describing harsh punishments and unpredictable rage. The book came out a year after Joan's death, so she never had the chance to respond to these allegations. People still debate the accuracy of Christina's account. Some of Crawford's friends and other children disputed the portrayal, while others backed up parts of it. Christina maintained that her mother was abusive throughout her life, while Joan's younger daughters, Kathy and Cindy, defended their mother and described a completely different childhood experience. As for rumors that Crawford posed for porn photos early in her career, no credible evidence has ever turned up to support this claim. It seems to be just an unfounded rumor. Crawford was definitely a perfectionist, both at work and at home, with extremely high standards for herself and others. Whether this translated to abuse, as described in Mommy Dearest, remains a hot topic among those who knew her and Hollywood historians. Beyond the controversies, Crawford showed incredible professional resilience and generosity to fans throughout her career. After being labeled box office poison in 1938, she fought her way back to relevance and won an Academy Award 7 years later. Throughout even her darkest periods, she maintained an incredible correspondence with fans, personally responding to thousands of letters yearly and even calling fans on the telephone, a practice she continued into her final years. 11th, Clark Gable. Called the King of Hollywood, Clark Gable starred in Gone with the Wind, 1939, and It Happened One Night, 1934. Audiences adored his confident swagger and charm, but rumors have claimed Gable was involved in a serious cover-up of a fatal accident. One persistent but unsubstantiated rumor claims that Gable was involved in a hit-and-run accident where a pedestrian was killed. According to this story, MGM executives allegedly bribed witnesses and officials to protect Gable's reputation. However, extensive research has found no credible evidence that such an incident ever occurred. What is documented is that on March 24, 1945, Gable ran his car into a tree on Sunset Boulevard. He got treated for minor injuries at Cedars of Lebanon Hospital. MGM did mislead the press about what happened, claiming another driver had forced Gable off the road, when in fact Gable had been drinking. This actual incident probably evolved over time into the more sensational hit-and-run story. The persistence of this unfounded rumor shows how Hollywood mythology often exaggerates real events, particularly when they involve beloved stars like Gable. While studios certainly protected their assets, there's no evidence Gable was ever involved in a fatal accident or that MGM orchestrated a major criminal cover-up. Gable suffered one of Hollywood's most heartbreaking personal tragedies when his beloved wife, Errol Lombard, was killed in a 1942 plane crash while returning from a war bond tour. Devastated by grief, Gable enlisted in the Army Air Forces despite being 41 years old, insisting on serving in combat rather than making propaganda films. He flew 5 dangerous combat missions as a gunner over Germany, with many believing he was deliberately seeking dangerous assignments in his grief. When he returned to Hollywood after the war, colleagues noticed he had aged dramatically and never regained his earlier carefree spirit. 12th, Adolf Monju. A dapper, mustached actor, well known for roles in The Front Page, 1931, and A Star is Born, 1937. Adolf Monju was a respected character actor known for playing sophisticated gentlemen. However, his place in controversial Hollywood history comes from his enthusiastic cooperation with the House Un-American Activities Committee during the anti-communist witch hunts of the late 1940s and 1950s. Monju testified as a friendly witness in October 1947. Unlike some other witnesses who refused to name names, Monju eagerly supported the committee's work and identified colleagues he believed had communist sympathies. He was a founding member of the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals, an anti-communist organization in Hollywood. The consequences of these investigations were severe for those named or suspected of leftist ties. Many writers, directors, and actors got blacklisted, meaning they couldn't find work in the industry. Some careers were permanently destroyed based on mere accusations, often without any evidence of actual wrongdoing. As the blacklist era faded, Monju found himself increasingly isolated in Hollywood social circles. Though he continued to work until shortly before his death in 1963, former friends, even non-communist ones, often avoided him at industry events. Monju's enthusiastic participation in what many now view as a political witch hunt has tarnished his legacy. While some at the time viewed him as patriotic for taking a stand against perceived communist infiltration, others saw his actions as betraying colleagues and supporting a process that undermined constitutional protections and basic civil liberties. 13th, Mabel Normand. In the silent era, Mabel Normand was a hugely popular comedian, starring in films with Charlie Chaplin and Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle. She had a playful presence and excellent comedic timing that won fans everywhere. Yet her career became entangled with several scandals, though her direct involvement remains questionable. Beyond her comedic talents, Normand was a pioneering female filmmaker who directed many of her own films when women rarely held such positions. Her success helped open doors for other women in early Hollywood. Despite her public image as a carefree comedienne, Normand was a serious creative force who constantly fought for artistic independence and better opportunities for women in the industry. One of the most significant scandals involved the unsolved murder of director William Desmond Taylor in 1922. Normand was among the last people to see Taylor alive, having visited him the evening of his murder. Though she was never considered a suspect by police and was cleared of any involvement, her association with the case damaged her reputation. The press speculated wildly about her relationship with Taylor and what she might have known about the crime. Normand also struggled with cocaine addiction, which was legal when she started using it, but became illegal and highly stigmatized in the 1920s. Her drug use, combined with health problems, contributed to her declining career and public image. While Normand was never implicated in any crimes herself, her proximity to scandals and her personal struggles with addiction damaged her standing with studios and the public. She continued making films until 1927, but never regained her former prominence. She died of tuberculosis in 1930 at age 37, leaving a complicated legacy as both a pioneering female comedian and a star whose career was damaged by association with controversy. 14th, Mary Miles Minter. Minter's path to stardom had troubling origins. Born Juliet Riley in 1902, she was pushed into acting at a very young age by her domineering mother, Charlotte Shelby. To get around child labor laws, when Juliet was just 10, Shelby faked a birth certificate claiming her daughter was 17 and changed her name to Mary Miles Minter. For years, the poor kid worked adult hours while being forced to pretend she was much older. Behind her innocent screen persona was a young woman robbed of her childhood, who later admitted in private letters that she hated acting and had never been allowed to choose her own path. Mary Miles Minter was a sweet-faced, silent film actress who developed a devoted fan base in romantic roles. Like Mabel Normand, she got caught up in the William Desmond Taylor murder case in 1922, which permanently derailed her promising career. After Taylor's murder, police discovered love letters from Minter to Taylor that suggested she had romantic feelings for him. At the time, Minter was 19 and Taylor was 49. While these letters created a sensation in the press, no evidence showed that Taylor returned these feelings or that they had a romantic relationship. Most historians believe Taylor viewed Minter more as a protege than a romantic interest. Some people speculated that Minter's mother, Charlotte Shelby, might have been involved in Taylor's murder, possibly motivated by jealousy or wanting to protect her daughter's reputation and career. Shelby was known to be controlling of her daughter's career and personal life, and allegedly owned a rare type of gun similar to the murder weapon. However, she was never charged, and the case remains unsolved. The scandal effectively ended Minter's promising career. The combination of the suggestive letters and the murder investigation made her toxic to studios, obsessed with public morality. She made only a few more films before retiring from the screen in 1923. Unlike many on this list, Minter was never accused of any wrongdoing herself, but rather was a casualty of scandal by association. After her forced retirement, Minter's relationship with her controlling mother collapsed into bitter estrangement. In the wake of the scandal, it came out that Shelby had been systematically stealing her daughter's earnings throughout her career, leaving the young star with only a fraction of her rightful fortune. The ensuing legal battles between mother and daughter dragged on for years. Minter eventually retreated from public life entirely, living as a recluse in a Santa Monica apartment until her death in 1984 at age 82. In her rare later interviews, she maintained that the Taylor murder had ruined 3 lives: Taylor's, her mother's, and her own. Despite living another 6 decades after leaving Hollywood, she reportedly never watched her own films again. 15th, Tom Neal. Tom Neal was an actor best known for the low-budget film noir Détour, 1945. He had this brooding look that fit dark stories perfectly. Off-screen, his life took violent turns that eventually led to real tragedy. Neal's violent tendencies were a shocking contrast to his privileged background. Born into a wealthy Chicago family in 1914, he got an elite education, attending Northwestern University and earning a law degree from Harvard. His parents wanted him to become a lawyer, but Neal was dead set on becoming an actor. In 1951, Neal got into a notorious fistfight with actor Franchot Tone over actress Barbara Payton, who was engaged to Tone but had been seeing Neal. Neal beat Tone so badly, he put him in the hospital with serious injuries, including a broken nose, concussion, and facial lacerations. The incident made headlines and damaged Neal's reputation in Hollywood. Far worse was the 1965 incident when Neal shot and killed his third wife, Gail Bennett. Neal claimed the shooting was accidental, but he was convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to prison. He served 6 years and was released on parole in 1971. Neal died of heart failure in 1972, just a year after getting out of prison. His case is a clear example of how violent behavior off-screen ultimately destroyed a once promising career. While many Hollywood scandals involved unproven allegations or questionable behavior, Neal's actions resulted in documented violence and criminal conviction. The tragic arc of Neal's life might have been different if his romance with Barbara Payton had lasted. After the notorious fistfight with Tone, Payton initially chose Neal, but eventually went back to Tone, whom she briefly married. This rejection sent Neal into a spiral of depression and rage that many colleagues believed he never recovered from. After being blacklisted following the fight, Neal tried to rebuild his life by starting a gardening business in Palm Springs, showing brief signs of getting it together before his final violent act. His son, Tom Neal Jr., later followed his father into acting but deliberately kept a low profile, haunted by his father's notorious legacy. 16th, Chico Marx. Chico Marx was part of the famous Marx Brothers comedy team, starring in movies like Duck Soup in 1933 and A Night at the Opera, 1935. Known for his fake Italian accent and piano playing, Chico made audiences roar with laughter. But behind his fun persona was a serious gambling addiction that caused endless problems. Chico had a compulsive gambling habit that frequently left him broke. He'd bet on almost anything, from horse races to card games, and often lost huge sums of money. These financial troubles were so persistent that his brothers sometimes had to bail him out or take extra film projects just to help him cover his debts. While rumors circulated that Chico borrowed money from loan sharks or people with mob connections, there's not much solid evidence that he got involved in criminal activity himself. His brothers, particularly Groucho, tried to help manage his finances, but Chico's gambling problems continued throughout his life. Despite his gambling problem, Chico served as the de facto manager of the Marx brothers during their early years and was largely responsible for their success. He was the most business savvy of the brothers and negotiated many of their contracts. In his final years, having lost his entire fortune, he relied on a weekly allowance his brothers provided him through their business manager to prevent him from gambling it all away at once. 17th Edward G. Robinson, famous for portraying tough gangsters in Little Caesar, 1931, and Key Largo, 1948, Edward G. Robinson created some of the most memorable villains in Hollywood history. Off camera, he was actually a cultured, intelligent man who collected fine art. But in the tense climate of the McCarthy era, he found himself under political suspicion. Robinson's intellectual depth was extraordinary among Hollywood actors. Born Emanuel Goldenberg in Bucharest, Romania, to a Yiddish-speaking Jewish family, he spoke 7 languages fluently. Far from the tough guys he portrayed, Robinson was one of Hollywood's foremost art collectors, eventually amassing a collection of Impressionist and post-Impressionist masterpieces valued at over $3 million that included works by Degas, Renoir, Matisse, and Van Gogh. The disconnect between his sophisticated personal life and his gangster roles was striking. He once remarked, "To my sorrow, I have never had the opportunity to portray the sort of man I really am." Robinson was falsely accused of communist sympathies during the Red Scare. The FBI included his name in a 1949 report identifying Hollywood figures as Communist Party members, though no evidence supported this claim. These accusations severely damaged his career and personal reputation. Under pressure, Robinson eventually appeared before the House Un-American Activities Committee in 1950 to clear his name. He acknowledged joining what he believed were anti-fascist organizations in the 1930s and 1940s, but stated he had never knowingly supported communism. In a 1952 statement published in the American Legion magazine, he wrote, "I was duped and used. I was lied to. But I repeat, I acted from good motives, and I have never knowingly aided communists or any communist cause." Unlike some others who named colleagues under pressure, Robinson refused to name names of supposed communists in Hollywood. Despite his efforts to clear his name, the damage was done. For several years, he struggled to find quality roles as studios feared controversy. Though his career eventually recovered, the false accusations permanently affected his life and legacy. The political persecution Robinson endured took a devastating personal toll. During the years he was blacklisted, he was forced to sell off much of his beloved art collection to support himself and his family. Friends reported he would sometimes weep when talking about specific paintings he had to part with. His principled stance against naming others cost him dearly. While actors who cooperated quickly resumed their careers, Robinson remained under a cloud of suspicion for years. 18th, Robert Taylor. Robert Taylor was a handsome leading man in classics like Camille, 1936, and Waterloo Bridge, 1940. Known as the man with the perfect profile, fans admired him for his quiet strength and polished manners. But like many in Hollywood, Taylor got caught up in the House Un-American Activities Committee investigations of the late 1940s. Despite his immense popularity, he reportedly hated watching his own films and would avoid public screenings of his work. His striking good looks often led critics and studio executives to dismiss his acting abilities, causing him to work doggedly to prove himself as more than just a pretty face. Perhaps most surprisingly, Taylor initially had no interest in becoming an actor. He had been studying medicine at Pomona College with plans to become a doctor when he was discovered in a campus play. In October 1947, Taylor testified as a friendly witness before the House Un-American Activities Committee. During his testimony, he stated that he believed the Communist Party should be outlawed and identified what he called communistic influence in the Screen Actors Guild. While he wasn't as aggressive in naming specific individuals as some other witnesses, his testimony contributed to the atmosphere of suspicion and fear in Hollywood. Taylor's political views were genuinely conservative, and his testimony appears to have been motivated by sincere anti-communist beliefs rather than opportunism. Nevertheless, his cooperation has been criticized by those who view the investigations as fundamentally unjust and destructive to civil liberties. Despite the controversy surrounding his testimony, Taylor's career didn't suffer. He continued to star in major films throughout the 1950s and early 1960s, demonstrating that supporting the House Un-American Activities Committee investigations wasn't professionally damaging, unlike opposing them. His case illustrates the political divisions in Hollywood during this period and how career outcomes often depended on which side one chose. 19th, Gary Cooper. Gary Cooper starred in many beloved films like High Noon, 1952, and Sergeant York, 1941. His laconic screen persona of few words was partially developed to mask his stutter, which emerged when he was nervous, particularly in his early acting days. Throughout his life, Cooper kept a thoughtful journal where he revealed intellectual depth and sensitivity that contradicted his public image of straightforward simplicity. With his tall frame and soft-spoken style, he represented the classic American hero, honest, brave, and kind. Yet Cooper, too, was drawn into the House Un-American Activities Committee hearings during the anti-communist investigations. On October 23, 1947, Cooper testified as a friendly witness. His testimony was more measured than some others. Cooper stated that he had noticed what he considered communist influence in certain scripts, mentioning lines about the common man and economic themes. However, unlike more aggressive witnesses, Cooper did not name specific individuals as communists. In his testimony, Cooper said, "I think we all know pretty well who they are and what they are trying to do. I don't think the party is any good, and I would like to see it outlawed." He described what he perceived as attempts to spread labor problems, to make people worry about the same thing working man is worrying about in film content. Cooper's moderate stance reflected his conservative political views, but he stopped short of the most harmful type of testimony that directly accused colleagues. While his involvement with the HUAC remains controversial, it should be noted that Cooper later worked with suspected communist sympathizers, including Carl Foreman, on High Noon, suggesting a more complex position than some other HUAC supporters. 20th, Lupe Veles. Known as the Mexican Spitfire, Lupe Veles was a vibrant actress, singer, and dancer who brought incredible energy to both silent and talking pictures during the 1920s and 30s. Born in Mexico, Veles carved out a significant career in Hollywood, starring in films like The Gaucho, 1927, with Douglas Fairbanks and her popular series of Mexican Spitfire comedies. She was known for her fiery personality, both on and off screen. Behind her vivacious public image, Veles's life was marked by turbulent relationships and emotional struggles. Her tempestuous marriage to actor Johnny Weissmuller, famous for playing Tarzan, was filled with mutual physical abuse and public confrontations. She also had stormy affairs with Gary Cooper and other Hollywood figures, once even reportedly shooting at Cooper after a heated argument. Veles's career faltered as she was increasingly typecast in stereotypical, fiery Latina roles that failed to showcase her full range as a performer. As her star began to fade, she struggled with depression and identity issues, torn between her Mexican heritage and her desire to be accepted in American society. On December 14, 1944, Veles took her own life at age 36. She was pregnant by her then-boyfriend Harold Ramond, who refused to marry her. Concerned about the scandal of unwed motherhood and its effect on her career, she wrote a suicide note and overdosed on sleeping pills. Contrary to urban legends about the circumstances of her death, which were largely fabricated in the sensationalist book Hollywood Babylon, she was found carefully arranged on her bed, having meticulously planned the visual details of her final scene. Veles's tragic story intersects with our documentary's themes of Hollywood's treatment of minorities, the personal costs of fame, and how studios often failed to protect their stars' mental health. Like many others on our list, her personal struggles were exploited by the press, and myths about her death overshadowed her genuine talents and contributions to cinema. 21st, Hedi Lamar. Widely considered one of the most beautiful women in Hollywood, Austrian-born Hedi Lamar starred in films like Algiers, 1938, Samson and Delilah, 1949, and Boomtown, 1940. Her exotic beauty made her a major star during MGM's golden era, but her public image as merely a glamorous actress hid her remarkable scientific mind and groundbreaking technical innovations. What most moviegoers never knew was that Lamar was also a brilliant inventor. During World War II, she and composer George Raft developed and patented a secret communications system that used frequency hopping to prevent enemy forces from jamming torpedo signals. This groundbreaking technology laid the foundation for wireless communications we use today, including Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and GPS. Her invention was so ahead of its time that the U.S. military didn't fully implement it until the 1960s. Lamar's scientific contributions weren't recognized until much later in her life. In 1997, she finally received the Electronic Frontier Foundation Pioneer Award and posthumously was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 2014. Her early life was equally remarkable. She escaped from her first husband, an Austrian arms dealer with Nazi connections, by disguising herself as a maid and fleeing to Paris. Despite her intelligence and inventive talents, Lamar was consistently underestimated and primarily valued for her appearance. She once remarked, "Any girl can be glamorous. All you have to do is stand still and look stupid." As she aged, she became increasingly reclusive, particularly after unsuccessful plastic surgery in the 1960s. She died in 2000 at age 85, having lived long enough to see the beginnings of recognition for her technical innovations, but never fully appreciated during her Hollywood years. Lamar's story provides an important counterpoint to our documentary's examination of controversial Hollywood figures. While many stars faced public scandals or accusations, Lamar's controversy was the industry's failure to recognize her intellectual contributions and reducing her to merely her physical appearance. Her dual identity as actress and inventor highlights the restrictive roles women were expected to play during Hollywood's golden age. 22nd, Carl Alfalfa Switzer. Carl Switzer is remembered for his role in the Our Gang, also known as the Little Rascals, comedy shorts. As a child actor, he won hearts with his spiky hair and off-key singing. Sadly, Switzer's adult life took several troubling turns after his childhood fame faded. After his child acting career ended, Switzer struggled to find steady acting work as an adult. He took various jobs, including working as a dog trainer and hunting guide. He developed a reputation for aggressive behavior and was involved in several altercations and minor legal issues. On January 21, 1959, Switzer was fatally shot during a confrontation with Moses Bud Stilts over a financial dispute. Switzer had gone to Stilts's home to collect a debt of $50 related to a lost hunting dog that Switzer had found and returned to its owner. An argument broke out, escalating into a physical fight during which Stilts shot Switzer. A coroner's jury ruled the shooting a justifiable homicide, though questions about the circumstances remain. For decades, the full details of Switzer's death were unclear. In 2001, Tom Corrigan, Stilts's stepson who witnessed the shooting, came forward claiming the shooting was more like murder than self-defense, stating that Switzer had only a closed penknife when he was shot. However, the case was never reopened. Switzer's tragic end at age 31 represents the difficult transition many child stars face when their early fame fades, leaving them unprepared for adult life and struggling to establish new identities. Adding to the tragedy of Switzer's life was how the studio system exploited him financially. Despite appearing in over 100 Our Gang shorts, Switzer earned just $50 per week during most of his time with the series, with no residuals from the films that continued to air for decades. When he was dropped from the series at age 12, as he began to outgrow the Alfalfa character, he had little savings and no marketable skills beyond acting. Even more heartbreaking, the hunting dog at the center of the fatal dispute had actually been found and returned by Switzer as a genuine act of kindness, and the dispute arose only when the pet's owner reneged on a promised reward. Behind Alfalfa's iconic cowlick lies Hollywood's darkest truth. When the spotlight fades, child stars like Carl Switzer often spiral into desperation, reminding us that fame's glow can burn out faster than it takes to say cut.